The moment I read the email, it felt like the final nail in a coffin I didn't even know I was lying in. The screen glowed coldly in the dim light of my penthouse, each word sharp and deliberate. The Bennett family reunion, a celebration of our legacy. My name was nowhere to be found on the guest list. Not as an attendee, not as an honoree, not even as a footnote. It was as if I didn't exist. A tight, hollow feeling crawled up my throat, choking me. My chest felt too tight, my breath too shallow, as if the air in the room had thinned. I should have known better. After years of being the outsider in my own family, this was bound to happen. The memories flickered unbidden. Dinners where my siblings were praised for their accomplishments while I sat in silence, my achievements treated like a hobby. The nights I spent staring at my ceiling, wondering if I'd ever be enough, if I'd ever stop being the disappointment they whispered about behind closed doors. A second notification popped up, a separate private message from Aunt Marilyn. The subject line alone was enough to make my stomach twist. Private note, please read. I clicked it open, feeling the weight settle even before the words hit me. Olivia, dear, I'm sending this privately to spare you public embarrassment. The reunion is meant to celebrate Parker family success and legacy. Given your continued alternative lifestyle choices, we think it best you sit this one out. No failures allowed is our little theme this year. I'm sure you understand. Perhaps next time, if things have improved for you. No failures allowed. The words pulsed like a wound, raw and unhealed. Years of hard work, of fighting to prove myself, of building something from nothing. And they still saw me as the black sheep, the lost cause. I stared at the rain streaking down the glass, the blurred lights of the Boston skyline beyond. My own reflection, faint in the window, looked like a ghost. The Olivia they thought they knew was long gone, but they hadn't noticed. They never did. A soft knock pulled me from the spiral. Rachel, my assistant, stepped in quietly, her dark eyes immediately narrowing at the sight of me. She was sharp, always picking up on things others missed. What happened? She asked, her voice low but urgent. I turned the screen toward her. She read quickly, her lips thinning into a hard line as she absorbed the email. Her gaze shifted to me, a flicker of something fierce in her eyes. They're doing the reunion at the Bennett Legacy Tower, she said, her voice a notch above a whisper. The words hit me like a punch. I blinked. What? Rachel nodded, her expression darkening. I saw the event reservation come through last week, but I didn't connect the name at the time. Full buyout. Ballrooms, suites, VIP packages. It's your family. They're holding it in your building. For a heartbeat, the room tilted. The soft sound of the rain outside seemed to grow louder, a distant roar against the glass. My building, my vision. The place I'd spent years pouring my heart into, shaping every detail, fighting for every inch of ground. They were going to celebrate their legacy in the house I built, and they had no idea. I got up slowly, my legs stiff like they weren't mine. I walked to the window, pressing my palm flat against the glass. The Bennett Legacy Tower loomed in the distance, its sleek lines cutting into the night sky. My name wasn't on the reunion invitation, but it was carved into the stone of that building, etched into every floor, every wall, every decision. They'd never see me, but they were about to stand on my work, breathe in the spaces I'd created, toast to their success in my house. A laugh, sharp, bitter, unfamiliar, escaped before I could stop it. The irony burned, searing deep. Rachel watched me carefully, her arms crossed, waiting for my next move. My mind raced, calculating. I could let it go, let them have their celebration and continue to erase me from their narrative. Or I could show them exactly who they'd underestimated. The thought took root, dark and steady. My heart pounded, not with fear this time, but with something colder, sharper. Resolve. Rachel's voice cut through the heavy silence. What do you want to do? I stared at the tower, the rain blurring the edges of the lights. the weight of the years pressing down on me like a second skin. And then, in a voice I barely recognized as mine, I whispered, "If they don't want me at their table, they'll have to sit at mine." They walked in with their heads held high, never once looking up at the name etched into the marble above them. My name. The Bennett Legacy Tower's grand lobby glowed under the morning sun, every polished surface catching the light, every detail humming with quiet elegance. I watched them from the security office, the glass wall in front of me doubling as both a barrier and a stage. Marcus strutted through the revolving doors first, tossing his keys to the valet without a glance, tipping the bellhop with a flick of his wrist like a king bestowing coins to a servant. His phone buzzed nonstop, and he answered with a practiced smirk, already launching into a story about a high-profile pediatric case, as if the world revolved around him. Marilyn followed, flanked by uniformed staff dragging her designer luggage. She waved a hand dismissively at the front desk, her voice floating clearly through the surveillance feed. "I'll be needing the penthouse instead. The suite you assigned me is quaint." Her nose wrinkled, her tone sugar-laced venom. Diana, standing poised behind the desk, nodded professionally, her voice warm but firm. "Mrs. Bennett, the penthouse is already reserved, but we've prepared the Windsor suite to exceed your expectations." Richard arrived next, moving with an air of controlled detachment. He barely acknowledged the staff, nodding curtly when the concierge greeted him. Vanessa trailed behind, eyes glued to her phone, tapping out messages furiously as if the rest of the world were an inconvenient background. I leaned back in my chair, my fingers steepled under my chin. Every scene unfolding before me was a twisted play I knew by heart, each character predictable in their arrogance, blind to the walls they were walking into. Rachel sat nearby, her laptop open, eyes scanning incoming messages. Ryan, standing behind us, spoke quietly. "Surveillance fully operational. We've got audio in all the key suites, ballroom, and executive lounge. Hidden cameras in public areas only, per protocol." "Good," I murmured. Diana's voice crackled in through the feed as she fielded another wave of demands. Marilyn wanted extra pillows, fluffed properly. Marcus was already complaining about the wine selection in his suite, and Ethan, who'd arrived last, insisted on a last-minute spa appointment for his girlfriend, smirking as if he owned the place. "Let them have it all," I said, my voice low, almost a whisper. "Every whim, every preference. Give them the 5-star experience they expect. But record everything. Every word, every entitled sneer, every careless confession." Rachel's fingers tapped rapidly across her keyboard, compiling notes in real time. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine, a silent agreement passing between us. As the hours ticked by, patterns began to emerge like threads in a tapestry. Marilyn took a hushed phone call in the lobby bar. Her voice clipped, almost panicked. The audio feed picked up snippets. "I need more time. The loan isn't due yet. Yes, I understand the terms, but..." Rachel's brows lifted slightly, noting it down. In another suite, Ethan leaned in close to Marcus, whispering with a smirk that barely contained his glee. "Offshore accounts." "No, Dad has no clue. Let him make his little announcement tomorrow. Olivia's out for good." My jaw tightened. Out for good. I watched the monitors as Marilyn waved off a bellhop who tried to offer assistance with her luggage. Her voice snapped, "We don't take orders from people like you." The young man's face flushed, but he quickly turned away, swallowing the insult like bitter medicine. Something inside me twisted. My fists clenched, the nails digging into my palms until the sting burned through the numbness. Not for long. Ryan's voice broke through, steady as always. "You want us to intervene if she crosses a line?" I shook my head slowly, never taking my eyes off the screen. "Number, let them keep talking. Let them keep believing they own the world." On the screen, Ethan leaned back in his chair, a glass of bourbon in his hand, the smirk on his face a punch I could almost feel. "Let's see what Dad announces at the gala tomorrow. Olivia's out of the picture for good." My eyes narrowed into thin, dark slits. The moment had arrived. Years of invisibility, years of being ignored, all leading to this. Their faces when they realized whose house they were standing in. I stood just beyond the threshold of the grand ballroom, the soft hum of the string quartet floating through the air, mingling with the clinking of crystal glasses and the low murmur of conversation. Every detail gleamed under the light of the chandeliers. Flawless, curated, mine. The air smelled of jasmine and polished wood, the scent of control, of precision. As a child, I used to imagine being on the outside looking in. Tonight, I was both. The echoes of those long-ago family dinners tugged at the edges of my mind. Me, small and silent at the table, watching as the adults toasted each other's accomplishments, their laughter swelling around me like a tidal wave, drowning out the sound of my own heartbeat. Now, the scene was different, but the faces were the same. Richard, my father, stood at the head of the room, champagne flute raised high, his voice ringing clear and proud. To the Bennett family, may our legacy continue to shine as a beacon of excellence in Boston and beyond. Applause rippled through the room, a chorus of approval echoing his words. Marilyn took the stage next, her presence commanding as always. Her voice carried, smooth and cutting, practiced like a blade honed over years of use. The Bennett name stands for excellence. We prune the weak branches so that the tree may flourish. That's what family means. Tradition, strength, and knowing when to let go. The words struck like a slap, but I held steady, watching from the edge of the room, the shadows my cover. My heart beat a steady, slow rhythm. Calm, controlled, ready. Diana moved through the room with the grace of a conductor, ensuring the service was seamless, the flow uninterrupted. Ryan's figure lingered discreetly near the back, a silent guardian. Rachel hovered in the wings, a tablet in her hands, ready to document every flicker of shock, every gasp, every unraveling. I took a step forward, the click of my heels sharp against the marble. The lights dimmed slightly, as prearranged, and the music softened to a quiet hum. The room's attention shifted naturally, a collective intake of breath as the large projection screen above the stage flickered to life. A single image appeared. The Bennett Legacy Tower, its sleek silhouette rising against the night sky, the name carved into the facade. Then a line of text faded in, bold and clear. Founded and owned by Olivia Bennett. For a second, there was only silence. An inhale the room forgot to release. Then, the sound shattered. A glass slipping from someone's hand, the dull crack as it hit the floor, whispers spiking like static. Richard's mouth opened, but no sound emerged. Marilyn's face drained of color, her expression freezing in a half-smile, half-sneer that now looked grotesque under the shifting lights. Marcus's brow furrowed, confusion warring with disbelief. Ethan straightened in his chair, his posture tense, wary. I moved forward, step by deliberate step, cutting through the tension like a blade. My gown caught the light, each shimmer a silent announcement. I took the stage without rush, without apology, and let the weight of the moment settle on the room. My family, I began, voice even, crisp, measured. You've spent years talking about legacy, about strength, about pruning weak branches, about who is worthy of a seat at this table. I paused, letting the words hang, letting their faces shift, squirm, harden. You wanted a legacy, I continued, the quiet fury threading through my voice. Here it is, built without your approval, without your name, without your money. Every inch of this place, every decision, every detail is mine. You stood on the outside looking in, not even realizing whose home you were walking into. I turned slightly, gaze sweeping over the room. I caught Marilyn's eyes, saw the rigid set of her jaw, the panic starting to flicker behind her polished mask. Richard looked as if he'd been struck, the color draining from his face. Marcus stared, open-mouthed, unable to process. This is my house, I said, my voice firm, resonant, cutting through the stunned silence like glass breaking. And tonight I decide who stays. The air seemed to hold its breath, the weight of years of dismissal crashing into the walls they thought would protect them. Marilyn's face had gone a ghostly pale, her lips parting but no sound escaping. Richard's fingers twitched around the stem of his glass, a tremor betraying the mask he wore. The entire room sat frozen, trapped between the world they thought they ruled and the truth unraveling at their feet. I let the silence stretch, let it crack under its own weight, then smiled. A quiet, devastating curve of my lips, the kind of smile that says the rules have changed, and you never saw it coming. Let's begin. Silence, when it finally came, wasn't peaceful. It was the air being sucked out of the room. The grand ballroom, once alive with the clink of glasses and the hum of polite conversation, sat suspended in a kind of stunned paralysis. The string quartet had stopped mid-note, their bows hovering awkwardly in the air. Guests whispered behind napkins, some rising discreetly, others frozen in place, their eyes darting between me and the family at the head table. I stood on the stage, a deliberate, steady presence. My heart raced, but my face remained composed, every muscle trained into stillness. Years of waiting for their respect. Tonight, I realized I never needed it. The power didn't come from their approval. It pulsed in the air around me, in the walls they sat beneath, in the name etched into the stone. My name. The family huddled together, a fractured front. Richard, his face a pale, tight mask, stared at me with the kind of disbelief that bordered on fury. Marilyn sat rigid in her chair, lips pinched so tightly they'd nearly disappeared, her hands clenched into trembling fists on the tablecloth. Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, while Ethan leaned back in his seat, eyes narrowed, arms crossed in a posture of forced nonchalance. Vanessa. Her gaze flickered between me and the others, her phone forgotten on the table, a crease forming between her brows. Richard's voice shattered the stillness, low and sharp. You did this to humiliate us? I stepped down from the stage, my heels clicking softly on the marble. The sound was like a gavel, each step a punctuation mark. No, I said, my voice even, clear. I did it because I had to. The tension coiled tighter, the space between us shrinking, crackling with unspoken words. Marilyn let out a brittle laugh, high and strained. A building doesn't make you a Bennett, Olivia. It's just brick and glass. Legacy is about family, about blood. Her words ignited something cold and deliberate in me. I reached into the slim envelope I'd tucked beneath my arm and laid it flat on the table in front of them. A single glance at Ryan in the corner told me the team had the recordings ready, the files queued up, every receipt lined in order. I flipped the envelope open and began sliding the pages out, one by one. Each document landed with a soft, damning thud. Marilyn, I began, my voice cutting through the still air like a blade. The board of directors at Boston Heritage Bank has been very interested in your personal loan accounts, especially the defaults. Her breath hitched audibly, a sharp intake that broke the brittle silence. I turned to Ethan. Your offshore accounts in the Caymans? The IRS would love to hear about those. And that little shell corporation you've been funneling consulting fees through? Cute. Sloppy, but cute. Ethan's smirk faltered, his fingers tightening around the stem of his glass. Then to Marcus, whose eyes darted down to the folder as if trying to will it shut. Your research grants, false expense reports, manipulated data submissions. I'm sure the ethics committee would find that fascinating. Each accusation landed like a slap, the room fracturing in real time. Faces shifted, some pale, some flushed, some casting sideways glances as if seeking the nearest exit. I built something while you all tore each other apart, I said, my voice low, steady, unyielding. The fury in me wasn't loud. It burned cold, controlled, precise. Marilyn surged to her feet, her chair scraping sharply against the floor. Her voice was a shriek, ragged with years of unspoken venom. You're still nothing. Without the Bennett name, you'd be... I raised my hand, cutting her off mid-sentence. My gaze locked onto hers, unwavering. Look around, Marilyn. Whose name is on these walls? Her mouth opened in a silent gasp, her shoulders stiffening as the reality finally cracked through the denial. The hush was deafening, thick with the weight of exposed truths. Richard's voice slid in next, low and cold like a blade being unsheathed. This isn't over. I met his gaze, unflinching, the steel in me finally free of the years of doubt. My smile was small, sharp. Oh, I know. The empire they prided themselves on wasn't built on excellence. It was built on lies. The morning light slanted through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my office, cutting across the polished conference table like a spotlight. They sat there, each in their carefully curated seats, but the cracks in their facades were impossible to ignore. Richard's jaw was clenched so tightly his teeth might shatter. Marilyn's hands fluttered with a nervous energy she couldn't conceal. Marcus shifted restlessly, his gaze darting from one document to the next, while Ethan sat back, arms folded, trying to project nonchalance but betraying himself in the tight set of his lips. Vanessa stared down at her hands, her wedding band catching the light like a noose. I used to think they held all the cards. Turns out they were too busy playing against each other to notice the dealer had changed. And now, it was time to deal. Let's talk about the future of the family legacy, I began, my voice measured, cutting through the room like the click of a metronome. Silence answered, brittle and sharp. Diana stood at the edge of the room, composed, her notepad ready. Ryan lingered near the door, eyes alert, his presence a quiet but unmistakable line of defense. I let the silence stretch just a second too long, then slid a folder across the table. It opened like a wound, documents spilling out, each page a carefully compiled truth they'd all pretended wasn't real. Marilyn, I said, voice smooth as glass, you leveraged family assets for your personal debts. You put the family trust at risk to cover your losses on a private jet and a summer villa in the Hamptons, and you lied about it. Marilyn's face flushed, her hands curling into fists. That's a gross exaggeration. It's documented. I cut her off, the softness gone from my tone. Shall I show you the emails? Her mouth snapped shut, her breath sharp and shallow. I turned to Ethan. Offshore accounts in the Caymans, wire transfers to shell corporations in Dubai. Do you think the IRS won't care? Or the FBI? Ethan's smirk faltered, the bravado slipping like wet paint. Marcus let out a nervous laugh, a brittle, hollow sound. This is absurd. We've always— Marcus, I interrupted, eyes locking onto his. Your falsified research reports, grant funds misused for personal expenses, falsified patient data, conflicts of interest hidden from the ethics board. You're not just risking your career, you're risking jail time. The words hung there, heavy, undeniable. Vanessa's voice cracked the tension. Stop. It wasn't a command, more a desperate plea. Her eyes glistened, a sheen of tears she tried to blink away. Just stop. None of this. None of this is what it's supposed to be. Her voice broke, and the weight of it seemed to buckle her posture, her shoulders curling inward. You all act like we're some perfect family. Marcus with his accolades, Ethan with his deals, Marilyn with her heirs, and me. God, I can't even keep my own marriage together. My husband's leaving me, and I don't even blame him. I'm exhausted. And it's all for what? For this circus? A hush fell over the room, thicker than before. I leaned forward, folding my hands neatly on the table. My voice was low even, but it sliced like a scalpel. You all chased an illusion. I built something real. While you were busy tearing each other down, I created something that stands. Marilyn opened her mouth, but I raised a hand, cutting her off with the weight of the moment. You have a choice. Step down quietly, or this goes public. The silence that followed wasn't shocked. It was a slow, sinking realization. Emma, the cousin who'd always lingered at the edges of family gatherings, her presence quiet and unassuming, finally spoke up. Her voice was steady, cutting through the air like a truth none of them wanted to hear. She's right, Emma said, her gaze flickering from face to face. We've all been complicit. It's time we stop pretending. Richard's fist slammed down on the table, the sharp crack echoing off the walls. You think you can tear this family apart? His voice was low, dangerous, like a storm gathering on the horizon. I didn't flinch. I met his gaze head on. The years of quiet desperation burned away, replaced by a cold, unwavering fire. No, I said, my voice like steel. You already did that. Before the weight of that could settle, a sharp knock echoed through the room. Ryan opened the door, and a man in a crisp suit stepped in, holding a stack of envelopes. Process server, Ryan announced quietly. The man distributed the papers, each landing in front of them with a dull, final thud. Legal notices. Olivia Bennett, filing for control of the family trust. The empire they prided themselves on wasn't just cracking. It was crumbling. They tried to cut me out of the family. So I built my own family. The rooftop garden of the Bennett Legacy Tower glowed under the fading light, the city below shimmering like scattered stars. The air was cool, laced with the scent of jasmine and freshly watered soil. The skyline stretched in every direction, Chicago's pulse beneath my feet. The name Olivia Bennett glowing atop the building like a quiet, steady flame. It wasn't just a name. It was mine. The others trickled out one by one, the silence between them fractured and heavy. Marilyn passed without a word, her heels clicking a bitter staccato against the stone as she disappeared into the waiting elevator. Marcus and Ethan lingered in the shadows, their faces tight, eyes burning with a resentment they couldn't voice. They didn't matter anymore. They were relics of a story I'd outgrown. Richard approached slowly, as if unsure of his footing on this new ground. The lines etched into his face seemed deeper now, the weight of his own pride settling heavy on his shoulders. For the first time, he looked small. You won, he said, voice low and uncertain. Are you happy? I turned to face him fully, the city lights reflecting in the glass behind me, framing the man who had once shaped my world. My voice was calm, even. This wasn't about winning. It was about being seen. He opened his mouth as if to argue, but no words came. A flicker of something, regret maybe, crossed his eyes before he turned away, leaving me to the quiet hum of the rooftop. Vanessa approached hesitantly, her steps tentative, the weight of her own unraveling evident in her hunched shoulders. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. For all of it. I didn't want to see. I regarded her for a long moment. The apology was a crack in the fortress of denial they'd all built. But cracks didn't erase years. Thank you, I said softly, my words measured, careful. But you need to understand, this doesn't mean we go back to the way things were. I've built something, and I'm not shrinking it to fit inside your world. She nodded, eyes glistening, a small, tentative step toward something that might one day be called understanding. Ryan joined me, his presence solid and steady. Diana smiled warmly, her eyes reflecting a quiet pride. Emma hovered nearby, offering a small, supportive nod. Sophia's voice chimed in through the phone I held in my hand, her words sharp and bright. New investors lined up. They're impressed with the numbers, want to discuss expanding the portfolio. I let out a slow breath, feeling the tension ease from my shoulders, the weight of expectations lifting, replaced by something lighter, sharper, possibility. To legacies we build ourselves, I said, raising my glass in a quiet toast. They clinked their glasses with mine, my chosen family, the team that had stood by me when the people who shared my blood had not. The city sprawled beneath us, vast and humming, the lights reflecting in the glass, in our eyes, in our smiles. As the last rays of sunlight bled into the horizon, I walked to the edge of the rooftop and looked out over the empire I'd built. Brick by brick, deal by deal, not as a Bennett by their definition, but as Olivia Bennett on my terms. My phone buzzed in my hand, the screen lighting up with a new message. We're not done yet. It was from Richard. I smiled faintly, unconcerned. Let him try. This was my story now. They thought they had silenced her, but in the end, it was their own secrets that shattered the illusion of power they clung to. Olivia's triumph wasn't born of revenge, but of resilience. Proof that true legacy is earned, not inherited. Like the final stroke of a judge's gavel, justice may arrive late, but it resounds with a clarity that echoes far beyond the moment. In the quiet aftermath, one truth stood unshaken. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. Sometimes the courage to stand alone is what makes a family's name truly worth remembering.